Shakespeare and the Shakespeare plays. Why do I like them? Why do I love them? Why do I study them? Why do I spend so much time with them? Well, it's a big question. I mean, back at school, I really wasn't very interested in Shakespeare until I was taken to see a whole series of the history plays at Stratford-Upon-Avon, see them in performance, and then, wow, they kind of took off for me. It was very exciting, you know, as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old boy, and to see them so well acted and performed. So after that, I kept on seeing more plays now and again, and at that time, Stratford was producing very good plays. You know, not all productions are good, but you know, the 70s and 80s were a good period. I think. You know, other people might have seen other plays which weren't so good. A lot does depend on how they're performed, and some people will say, "Oh, just go and see a performance," and that could be enough. That could be exciting, or it could turn you off. But I would add to that the reading of the plays, because as you get to read it, you get to feel and understand the poetry by actually reading it, seeing words, letting it go in, and realise a lot of words that really not normally used nowadays, difficult words, but it suddenly starts to take on a meaning as you read them. Because, you know, I've been to many plays now over the years in performance, and you kind of know half the audience don't know half the time what the words are that are being spoken, unless they've studied Shakespeare already. But if it's good acting, it doesn't matter, because the actors, through their acting, their gestures and so on, they give over what the words mean, if they're good actors and a good director. Because that's the secret of acting, is to act the words that are there. You know, don't try and change it. You act what's there, and you get into the part, and you get into what could be called the spirit of each character. And every character in the Shakespeare plays in particular has what you could call a spirit or archetype behind it. And therein lies the secret. Because really the Shakespeare plays are all allegories. You know, the histories are not entirely true histories, although they're based on a bit of history, but the rest is a made-up story. But they're stories with meanings, and a lot of the meanings are very hidden. And they're constructed in a similar way to how the Bible is constructed, with layer after layer after layer. That if you want to go deeper, there are signposts how to go deeper. And with the plays, Shakespeare plays in particular, you get this profound understanding, first of all, about human psychology. And this is 400 years before people like Jung, the great Jung, and so on. Shakespeare already understood human nature, human psychology, and how it works. And deeper things, what one might call the more spiritual matters, the deeper aspects of the human being, and the world that we call the spiritual world of angels and divine world, whatever names you might give it. In Shakespeare's time, the poets used the names from the classical times, the gods and goddesses, because the church at that time wouldn't have allowed too much direct naming in church terms, you know. But essentially Shakespeare plays are talking about the role of love, and what happens if you are loving and what happens if you're not loving. And so it has the comedies, for instance, which always have a good ending. They have a good ending because the characters in that, even if they make mistakes, they are loving. And that love is what carries them through mistakes, allows them to correct things, correct their perceptions, correct their emotions, and it ends up in a very good way. And that's called initiation. And there is a process for that, a recognized process, which the mystery schools teach. And Shakespeare knows that process. It's there in the plays, absolutely, if you know how to look for it. They go in cycles and with steps or degrees in each cycle. And that's quite exciting, because then you can understand how the Shakespeare plays will help you to understand and go through your own initiations in your own life, to recognise the stages in it, why you get the challenges, and how best to respond to it. The tragedies will show challenges coming, but there's not love there. Because there's not love, there's something the opposite. Anti-love, basically, through selfishness, greed, jealousy, you name it, even the worst horrors Shakespeare shows. And because there's no redeeming factor, no real love being shown or shared, everything sinks down and down and down to the normal ending. I mean, it's, if you're young, you're not experiencing these things, but if you're older, you get more experience. You see, if wrong things are done, they don't survive. It's like they kill off each other. That they only the good actually survives over a long period of time. The bad does not survive. It makes war on itself, and that, in the end, that's that. But the Shakespeare plays are lovely because they do bring in a redeeming factor somewhere, usually with the sound of music or some sort of sound introduced to it that's of a heavenly nature, and very often through a woman. Shakespeare is very pro-woman, pro-feminine, which is rather lovely, especially for those times. In a sense, you could say he's the first feminist, although a lot of modern feminists don't see it that way. But he, you know, often the great heroes that Shakespeare plays are the women. They're the heroes, they're the heroines. That's not to say the men don't also become heroes. It is the hero's path for a man or a woman, shown so clearly in the Shakespeare plays. But again, how it's performed depends on the director and the understanding of the director and the actors too. The actors usually do what they're told. So it's fundamental the director understands some of the depth, otherwise it can be missed. And the Shakespeare plays I've seen, some of them being rubbish performances really, they're not true Shakespeare.
Peter, can you give an example of a common Shakespeare play that maybe many people know, and the cycles of initiation that one of the characters would go through?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, one of the most popular plays, of course, is Midsummer Night's Dream, which is lovely. It's very enjoyable, and you can enjoy it on lots of different levels. And but in it, you've got these four characters, really, two couples who've got this love, but the love gets mixed up. And so it's a question of how do you sort out that love so that you get the right people loving the right partner. And so that's what the play is. So it shows the cycle through this bringing in the fairies, you know, the imaginary realm. It's actually the realm of the psyche, of initiation. Something comes into their lives which confuses. First of all, there's a confusion. Sometimes it's described as the tempest, like in the play The Tempest. Mm-hmm. But confusion comes in, and then out of the confusion, as long as there's earnest love or desire, that would take them on to the next step, which is to understand and perceive clearly, and then eventually to do the right thing. But the first thing, you have to sort out the desires, and they need to be loving to go on initiation, and then it has to be the right object of desire, right purpose. Mm-hmm. In fact, we need perception to come in. So Midsummer Night's Dream, you see this whole emphasis on the eyes, and putting this ointment in the eyes, and changing people's perception, and therefore their love, where they put their love is changed because their perception changes. And so there's a confusion to start with, which is the funny part of the play, and then a new ointment is put on which makes them clear-sighted to the right people. So it all ends up very happily, like a fairy story. They will live happily ever after. Ho, 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 of course, but you know, that's the point. You get to this point of happiness. Well, in real initiation in life, you can go through cycle after cycle of this. In Christian teachings, it's symbolized by baptism, transfiguration, crucifixion, in the sense that you're putting things into action in an unselfish way. So you're sacrificing your own ego, selfishness, in order to do good for others in the world. And that's a better word for that would be service or charity. Faith, hope, charity is another name for the three main steps. Being loving in your desires, understanding in your thoughts, you know, not judgmental in the wrong way, but having a clear perception to understand what really is right and what's wrong, or what the problem is, and then to work out how to put it into action to help help if it's a problem, how to help the problem, and the whole depth of teaching is about that. But certainly I've been taught through it about what are called PowerPoints and things like that, or gateways in the stage of initiation. So as you learn to recognise them in your own life and go through it, the ultimate is to help open your heart so much in a good, genuinely good way, and get your perception so clear you become visionary in the right sort of way, and your actions become wise and good and successful in doing good, and eventually you get better and better and better at it. You gain more knowledge each time. Knowledge is the same as knowledge of truth is the same as what's called illumination. It illumines the mind, gives joy.
Mm-hmm.
So you light up, your face lights up. You know, people's faces light up when they're in that joy that's beyond just ordinary happiness. It's because you know something of truth. You recognise there's somebody else. You recognise their love. You recognise something that is truly good. You know it because you've experienced it yourself. And it's that knowledge from experience of that truth which is love. And Shakespeare shows the way in these plays. Comedies in particular. Tragedies show the opposite, because ultimately the only way we can know the real truths is to experience something of what isn't truth, and the theatre is a safer place to experience that than actually in real life itself. I mean, who wants to be in a war where everybody's killing, bombing and hurting each other in order to learn? Much easier to learn that sort of thing in the theatre, and then you can have your own rapport, you can understand what it's like and think, oh no, I don't want to do that. That's totally the wrong thing to do, you know. And if that is done, it's going to lead to that, lead to that, lead to that. Disaster piles on disaster until somebody loves. And, you know, I think a lot of the Christian teachings, I think for me, they're the most fundamentally good teachings in the world. Revelatory, and the main Christian teaching is love God. God is love. Love God, or love, and love your neighbour as yourself. Mm-hmm. All the law and prophets are summed up in that. That's the main thing we're here on earth to do, and then we can create paradise together. And the Shakespeare plays, of course, they're not the only sacred texts, because they are sacred, they're mysteries. They're not the only ones, of course, in the world, but they are brilliant and very well designed for the present period of time we're in.
What would be a good way for people to access the plays if they are a little intimidated by reading the original text?
You could get into it. Yes, the original text can put you off. It's very hard. It's what put me off at school. It's better to read a synopsis, a short synopsis of it that somebody's done, a good synopsis, and see a performance. Mm-hmm. And then you'll get an idea of the wording that's being used from the actors themselves. Mm-hmm. And then when you do read the real text, it'll make more sense to you as you read it.
Do you recommend any of the stories, the books like by Charles and Mary Lamb or Nesbitt, to read the stories of the plays?
Yeah, the Lamb books are super.
Good.
I
Okay.
use those.
That's great. I do too.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Anything else that you'd like to add?
About Shakespeare, well, it's a big thing. It's not just about psychology. It's about initiation, helping to create life to be better for everybody, becoming a hero or heroine in that, in the good way, not just for fame or fortune, but genuinely good person. But it takes you into things even beyond that, really. Difficult to talk about in an interview, but it is a mystery path. It's like a treasure hunt to find the greatest treasure of all. You have to find
What is the meaning? The meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life, and what is our purpose?
Yes.
And how do we get there?
Yeah, and why am I here? And who am I?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I love about the plays is the things that the characters go through. You really learn how to not to take things too seriously. to not pay that much attention to the ups and downs of life,
Yes, that's right.
but just to kind of keep your eye on the goal,
Yeah,
a higher goal.
yeah. You learn that life is full of humour, and that humour is good as long as it's not at the expense of anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But life plays little tricks like fairies are supposed to do little tricks, but they're not to hurt anybody. They're actually to make life richer and fun.
Mm-hmm.
So like party tricks, and life is humorous. And of course, one of the great secrets that Shakespeare gives is we're all actors on the stage of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. We're acting a part.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps to know something of your role and what you're supposed to act. And so the initiatory path helps you to get to know the role you're playing and how to play it better, and the help to call upon to do it better.
So besides reading the plays and reading the synopsis and seeing the plays, acting out out scenes from the plays and playing roles.
Oh yeah, it's great fun. It's great fun, and it's surprising what it brings out in people, even if they're reticent to start with. Once they try it out, might be very shy to start with, and suddenly it's like the role takes over. They're suddenly in it, and they enjoy it. And they do it very well usually. And it's a key in acting that sort of way is that when you've acted that part and it's time to stop, to become yourself again, you've got to shake it off. Because you don't want to be stuck in a Macbeth, for instance.
Right.
You shake it off, otherwise it can carry on working on you. Because all these characters of archetypes, other names like spiritual beings or ideas, and they're living ideas. So you can tune into them to act a part. Good actors will do that. They'll tune into that living idea, living archetype, which will then inspire them and empower them. But you've got to, when you know the time's right, stop that. You've got to shake it off. Say that's it, enough. And you resume your ordinary life. Ultimately, it's all, the Shakespeare play is all to teach you what is your own spiritual living, what is your own spiritual archetype? What's your own living idea that's behind you? What are you, in other words?
Could that be different than the archetypes that are presented in the plays, or do you think the plays present all the archetypes?
I think they probably present all the archetypes as are known to man.
So then you could identify your own archetype by studying the plays.
I think so. And you can also see the possibility of moving from one to another. If you think the archetype I'm tuned into isn't quite right, I want to improve on it, you can make that effort to the archetypes develop themselves. If we make the effort on Earth, you think the archetype isn't quite right. If we make the effort to improve here on Earth, it will also improve the archetype.
Okay.
It's sort of, if you like, the spiritual world or heaven affects the Earth, but the Earth also affects the heaven. It's what's known, it's called it's the Hermetic wisdom, the ancient wisdom. So it's as above, so below, as below, so above, the doing of the great work. Shakespeare shows this over and over again, how this works.
Yes.
It's really clever.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your vast body of knowledge with our audience. And I hope everyone who listens to this will be inspired, and perhaps we'll have another interview with you another time. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.